Hello, everyone, and welcome into the 25th episode of Jack's Mailbag, the series where I answer your Gamecock Athletics questions. If you have a question you want answered on next week's episode, be sure to drop it in the comments section below on this YouTube video, or I'll have a post on the Insiders Forum on GamecockCentral.com where you can ask any and all of your questions that you may have for me. This week, we are going to be predominantly talking about South Carolina football as the Gamecocks picked up a 23-19 win over Old Dominion this past Saturday, but now they look forward to their first SEC matchup of the year on the road at Kentucky in Lexington on Saturday afternoon at 3:30 p.m. on ABC. So it's going to be an exciting game, but we're going to look a little bit back at what happened over the weekend for the Gamecocks against Old Dominion in the season opener, what some of the struggles were and all that, and the positives, of course. And then we'll dive a little bit into what to expect this weekend from the team in Kentucky. So without further ado, let's get into our first question of the week, which isn't even a football question. We're going to start with a little bit of baseball. Hampton Rhodes asks, any updates on baseball? So not really that much new to report on with the baseball team right now. It's still it's football season right now, so there's not much going on. Like I said last week on the last episode, we will have fall practice will officially get going on September 30th. From what I understand, from what the press release put out by South Carolina did say. So September 30th is the first day of fall practice for the Gamecocks, but I know they've been back at Founders Park training in the weight room. I mean, it's all over social media and stuff. Seems like they've got a good team this year, and I'm excited to see how it all unfolds. Next question comes from Wild Bunch 2, who asks, I expect a smash mouth affair in Lexington on Saturday. I'm not sure either team is that good passing the football. What are your thoughts early on this week? So I agree with you. I think it's going to be a lot of physicality, smash mouth football. I guess, like you said, I expect South Carolina to run the football a bit. However, I also expect the Gamecocks to throw it a little bit more than maybe they did this past weekend against Old Dominion. But at the same time, I've said it before. I think with Kentucky, they have a good mix of a good run game, and you have Brock Vandagriff at quarterback who can sling it. So I think combined with all that, I think you're going to get a good mix of running the football as well as throwing it from Kentucky. And I think with the receivers they have there out in Lexington, you have Macklin, you have Barry and Brown, other guys like that. I think Kentucky is going to be a little bit more prone to throw the football and try to test the secondary a little bit that the Gamecocks have. But I think it's a favorable matchup for South Carolina if they play the way they did defensively this past weekend against Old Dominion. It's going to be a little bit tougher, but I do think South Carolina can go out here and get the win. There are ways to get the job done. I think a lot of people are counting this team out already. I still think they have a chance, but we're going to have to see what happens. This is going to be a very, very interesting matchup. Next question comes from Washington Cock, who asks, Jack, you posed the question to us, how would you rate the team's performance on a scale of 0 to 10? What would you give the team? I would say, thinking about it, I would give it like a 6. I think a 6 is about where it is because I'll tell you what, the defense performed very well against Old Dominion. 4 turnovers, a bunch of forced fumbles, bunch of sacks, tackles for loss. I think they played very well, and you made the key plays when it mattered most. Obviously, Kyle Kennard had the forced fumble right out of the gate on the second play of the game, and South Carolina went in, punched in right after that. And then later in the game, when you're trailing by a few points, Dylan Stewart comes in, punches the ball out again, and this time DeAndre Jules lands on it and recovers. And then Lenore Sellers pummels into the end zone from 3 yards out and scores what would be the go-ahead and eventual game-winning touchdown. And then Jalen Kilgore seals the deal with an interception. So very good play from the Gamecocks last Saturday defensively. That's where most of this rating comes from. Special teams, I thought they played very well as well. I think the rating would have been a little bit higher had the Kai Kroger fake field goal touchdown pass been good. But again, there was an eligible man downfield, I believe. And even if that wasn't called, I think Brady Hunt was pushing off. So I think it would have been called off either way. But if it had been successful, we might be talking about this rating being like a 7. The reason it's not higher for sure is the offense. Too much inconsistency there. You weren't able to really throw the football much at all. You ran the ball fairly well, I think, 174 yards on the ground, 56 carries. I know the number is a little bit deflated just because of the the sacks and the kneel downs and stuff at the end of the game. But I think overall it was a very good game running the football. Now you just got to be able to throw it a little bit more to beat teams in the SEC. So let's go with a 6. Next question comes from Gamecock Vet, who asks, Jack, I asked the same questions to Chris Clark, but wanted your take. I am most concerned with the disconnect with Shane Beamer after the game. He said the O-line played well and the problem was perimeter blocking. Although the perimeter blocking was bad, the O-line was getting pushed around all day by a Sunbelt D-line that we had serious size on. I saw replays on the big board where Vershawn Lee got pushed backwards and down, and Kamar Bell got moved back along with several other linemen. He truly needs to fire Lonnie Teasley, as we are too deep across the O-line with talented athletes that are flat out not getting coached and with a poor scheme. Dow Loggins seems lost too. I believe he needs to be shown the door as well. Also, Shane seemed a little irritated when he said that they were going to celebrate the win. Sort of a thick-skinned Dabo Sweeney-like comment. Thoughts? That is a mouthful to break down. Let's start in reverse order. I think you should celebrate a win regardless. You should be happy that you won the football game. It wasn't pretty, but you got the job done. And like Shane said, you only get 12 Saturdays and you only get so many wins every year. So while I don't think you need to be celebrating like it's the Super Bowl every time, I think you should at least be happy that you got the win and celebrate that victory in and of itself. Dow Loggins, the play calling, I think it is what it is. It wasn't great, but I think it can be a lot of that had to do with the fact that maybe Sellers didn't stay in the pocket long enough and just decided to scramble and run. I think that had a part to do with it, but I think you have to understand what it is. South Carolina's going to run the football a lot more this year than it did last season. You have a lot of depth at that position, and obviously you brought in a running back like Rocket Sanders where you have to run the football with him. And I think the idea to further improve this offense is to get this team going in the short passing game. I think ODU did a pretty good job of taking that away in the first game of the season, and that kind of forced Lenoris to make some tough decisions and have to use his feet a little bit more. I would say try to backtrack on using his legs so much. Use it when he needs to and when he has space. But if you have time for a play to develop, okay, let's make it develop. And hopefully your receivers can go out there and catch the football. There's so many different factors of if these things were different, South Carolina's offense is night and day better. I think receivers have to create more separation. They have to catch more passes, get more involved, block better. Lenoris has to make better decisions, in my opinion, and be a little bit more precise and accurate with throwing the football. And then your offensive line has to block. And speaking of the offensive line, I think the perimeter blocking was definitely an issue. You go back and watch. I mean, there were times where the receivers and tight ends just did a really horrible job blocking, in my opinion. There were also times where the offensive line did not do well blocking either. But to counteract that point, I will say you don't run for 174 yards on the ground and have as many, I don't want to call them explosive, but let's say 15 or more yard long runs that South Carolina had if you're not blocking up front. I think that's just the truth of the matter. It's the proof in the pudding. You blocked enough up front to where you could get some nice gains. Are 4 sacks great? No. But I think for the most part, it wasn't pretty, but I do think South Carolina's offensive line looked a lot better this time around than they did, say, week 1 last year when they get 9 sacks against UNC. That's just my opinion. Take it for what you will. Take it or leave it, but that's just how I feel about it. And I don't think firing coaches after week 1 is going to really do much. I mean, you got to see it through. If something's not working midseason, make a change. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out there and fire someone right now. Next question comes from K. Ferg, who asks, after the updated depth chart, do you think we have the right lineup in place to see a significant change? Also, what does Mike Shula's role as the senior offensive assistant coach mean since he got upgraded from being an analyst? So, again, I'll go in reverse order here. Looking a little bit at Mike Shula, with him, I don't really see his role changing a ton because it's not like he's a coordinator or something, right? He's an assistant coach with the offense. I think the role of analyst and assistant coach are, I don't want to say they're one and the same, but they have that same feeling of where you're still helping out the offense and doing everything the way you're supposed to. The one thing that stands out with Shula is the fact that he obviously is the son of Don Shula. He comes from an NFL background. I know he coached with the Bills for a few years and worked with Josh Allen and stuff. I think his knowledge of how the helmet communication works, as well as now college teams can use iPads and stuff on the sideline. I think his knowledge of that is very important and instrumental in how South Carolina is going to develop as an offense. But this is a guy that obviously knows a lot of football, so he's probably just helping out, Dowell Loggins a lot, helping out the offense with Sellers and whatever he needs. So it's a lot of whatever is going on in the pros helping make the transition easier for the college guys now that all these new rules are being implemented. So that I would say is probably the main thing that is going on with him. And then to answer the first part of the question, do I feel like they have the right lineup in place offensively to see a significant change, or just in general, I should say? Actually, you look at the depth chart. I think it's pretty much a lot of the same. At receiver, it's basically the same. Mazio Bennett, could he step up and be one of those slot guys at receiver, or is it going to be a mix of Gage Larvadain, Peyton Mangrum, Luke Doty? But I do expect receivers. I think they need to have a bigger game. Just outside of that, I mean, I think they got the right lineup in place. Just to be honest, I don't see a ton of like major changes to where it's like, oh man, like this is the most noticeable thing, and it's going to be earth shattering. I think it's a lot of the same of what they did last year, and I think it's going to work. I just think this team is too good, too talented, have too much depth to where they don't perform better than they did last week. Defensively, they were great. Offensively, got a lot of work to do. But I think it's the first game. Keep in mind, they only have 3 returning starters on offense from last year's team. So a lot of new pieces, a lot of shuffling around. I think they're going to try to find some consistency this weekend against Kentucky, and I think they can do it. I think it just comes down to the fact that, okay, who's going to step up in the receiving game, and can Lenore Sellers develop a good connection with those guys on the outside, and can South Carolina run the football well, but also throw it well? I think those are the main things to keep an eye on there. But I do think where the depth chart is at, it's fine right now, and I think it lends itself well to working. Next question comes from 1M Creek Cock, who says the whole offense was sluggish and often looked confused. Is this from having too many plays in the game plan? I would say, and there's a lot of substance to the rest of the question, but it's more of a statement and the way 1M Creek Cock feels. So I'll answer the question part of things. I do think the offense looks sluggish and, out of place at times. Something just felt off. I noticed that right from the jump when you see the receivers not getting enough separation, dropping passes, and Sellers not being completely accurate. And Shane Beamer noticed this too. And when you look back at the audio from what the offense had to say in press conferences on Tuesday, big thing that stood out to me, Vershawn Lee said the communication just wasn't where it needed to be. Guys were not in the right place, not on the same page, and that is a problem to me. Something you got to get figured out. And I think it's something that is easier to solve compared to Lenore Sellers throwing the football accurately or receivers creating space and making plays. I think you have to be on the same page as a unit. And if you're not, you're going to struggle. And when you go into a road environment like it will be in Lexington, I'm sure it's going to be loud. I'm sure it's going to be a good crowd for a 3:30 ABC televised game. You have to be on the same page, because if you're not, man, it's going to be tough. You're going to be out of sync, not on the same page, and you're going to get penalties, the whole thing. We've seen it before with road teams. How does South Carolina alleviate that? Again, just get on the same note, same wavelength, and just play better. It's easier said than done, but I think they can go out there and definitely do it. Next question comes from F.A. Doc Cock, who asks, is Peyton Mangrum that far ahead of Luke Doty, Tyshawn Russell, and Gage Larvadain, as well as Elijah Caldwell and C.J. Adams at wide receiver? I would say, based on the snap count from last week, Vandrevius Jacobs played the most snaps with 46. Jared Brown had 35. Mazio Bennett had 33. Nick Harbor had 27. Then you got Peyton Mangrum with 26 snaps at receiver on offense. I mean, that's ahead of Dale Von Campbell, Gage Larvadain, and Luke Doty. And you look at Luke Doty, he only had 3 snaps at wide receiver. Larvadain had 11. Dale Von Campbell had 22. I think from what we've heard from Shane Beamer and stuff during fall camp, it seems like Peyton Mangrum's really owned his, earned his spot. And I mean, he caught a nice long touchdown in the final scrimmage, from what I remember Beamer saying. And obviously, we don't have video to go off of or anything, but just more like word of mouth. And it seems like he played pretty well. I mean, again, this isn't some scrub we're talking about here. Like, this is a walk-on, turned scholarship player that is a veteran, knows the system. He gets what needs to be done. And I think he's a valuable player in this offense that no one really talks about. And I think Peyton can definitely be a guy that plays a bit for South Carolina this year. And I'm not saying he's going to be the guy that steps up and becomes the true number one receiver in this offense. I think there are other guys ahead of him in that area. But I'm saying, like, don't sleep on him. I think he's someone that can definitely be a nice asset for this team. Next question comes from Hopkins Cock 56. Do we have anyone that could play strong safety better than our current one? Referring to DQ Smith. Young man plays hard, but seems to be out of position a lot. Remember him getting smoked some last year. 2 long TDs Saturday that a strong safety could have stopped. I will say it's not 2 long plays. It is, but it's not all on DQ. I think with the 72-yard touchdown pass to Isaiah Page of Old Dominion on Saturday, that's on DQ Smith. That's just a busted coverage, and he got beat, and he got his ankles broken, paid the price for it. So that's on him. With I believe it was the 36-yard touchdown run from Old Dominion's quarterback late in the second half on Saturday, that was just a mistake. That's what Clayton White said, and I believe it. And look, DQ, he didn't play the best on Saturday. He only had 1 tackle. He got beat. That's what people are going to remember. I think the fact that Clayton White has gone out publicly and just shown his support for DQ and knows he can turn it around, I believe him. Look, this is a guy that is, I've said it before, this is a 3-year starter we're talking about. This isn't some, first-year guy trying to make a name for himself. He's been there, done that, all right? He's proven he could play in the SEC and play well. And with him and Nicky Minwari out there in the secondary at safety, I think it's a nice combo. And it also, you also have guys like Jalen Kilgore and Judge Collier, guys like that, O'Donnell Fortune out there in the secondary at DB that can make plays. So it's not just all on DQ Smith. And I think the fact that he has others around him that play well or better than him, I think it's a nice thing to have when you can have that combination of guys out there. So I think DQ is going to be fine. I think just this is a real big test for him this weekend playing against Kentucky. This is a team with good receivers and a good quarterback. I think it will be something to keep an eye on early to see how much the Wildcats throw the ball and how much they're going in Smith's direction, because they probably, more likely than not, they definitely did see him get burned on that play watching the tape. So I think they're going to try to exploit him again, and teams should be coming after him. You see that, you should be going after him. But I do think he'll be ready for it, and I think the secondary in general is going to help out a lot on Saturday, and it won't just be all on him. And if he plays bad, oh well. All right, I'll eat my words on it, but I think he's going to play very well on Saturday and have a nice rebound game. Roe Cock asks, did our offensive blocking scheme change this year from the past couple of years? It seems a lot less aggressive, and if so, why? I think I can't really put my finger on it, but I felt like the blocking was fine on Saturday up front on the offense, with the line at least. I think outside with tight ends, receivers left a lot to be desired, and I think maybe it is a little bit aggressive in that way, but I think offensive line, they're doing what they got to do. It just needs to be a little bit better, in my opinion. But on the outside, it has to be a lot better. You can't be standing around not making a block. Like you saw, there were some runs on last Saturday where you just see Rocket Sanders or Juju McDowell, Lenore Sellers, whoever it is running the football, and you just have a receiver on the outside lollygagging around, not making a block. That's not what you need. You need guys that go out there and block. And if it's Amazio Bennett, if it's Peyton Mangrum, whoever it is, put them in the game and have them block. Because, I mean, at South Carolina, you can't just be a receiver like Shane Beamer said. You have to be able to block as well to be on this team. And that's something that I'm going to be interested to see if it changes at all in the second game of the year. And our final question comes from Swamp Fox 99, who says, just my opinion, but it may be because there are a lot of RPOs in game and rewatching. I could see significant push in some of the runs. Those were clearly straight up running plays. To run a zone scheme, though, you have to have a back that can read the holes and quickly decipher which one, as there are at times multiple avenues. Other times it depends on the lineman and how they engage the block or occupy the space. In the zone, it's not necessarily the old on, over, or back concept when gauging who a lineman will block. It's about getting to a particular space and engaging as a defender comes in. So, not really a question, more of just a statement and how Swamp Fox 99 feels and is calling it how it is. I do feel like there were a lot of RPOs on Saturday, and I expect that to be a constant in South Carolina's offense this season. I think with a guy like Sellers who can run and is big and strong, as fast as he is, it's an advantage because, I mean, if he's got lanes, he can make things happen. That's the nice thing. We saw, I mean, he ran for 60 something yards and on 22 carries and a touchdown on Saturday in the win. And he scored the game winning touchdown. So it makes sense that, look, you don't want him running 25 times a game. But if he can go out there and give you 10, 15, at 15, I think is the cap, honestly, that many good runs and be that productive, I think that is only going to help. And it forces Kentucky or any team for that matter to just be ready for whatever's to come. Like if Sellers gets it cooking in the pass game, I really think South Carolina is going to be able to really do whatever they need to do on offense to win this game. Like obviously that we know they're going to try to run the football, but man, if Sellers can get it cooking in the passing game, and he's able to run the RPOs and option off a play to flip to his running back or make a short throw. If he's able to be that versatile and do so many different things in this offense, I think that is what we're waiting to see. And if it happens on Saturday, I feel good about South Carolina's chances to win. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of Jack's Mailbag. Again, a lot of questions to get through, but I appreciate all of you who went out there and asked me questions. If you have one you want to ask on the next episode of Jack's Mailbag, again, be sure to drop it in the comments section below on this YouTube video, or like I said before at the beginning of the video, I'll have a post on the Insiders Forum on GamecockCentral.com where subscribers, if you're a subscriber, you get first dibs on asking any question that you want answered in these episodes every week. So that's going to do it for now. Again, South Carolina is on the road at Kentucky in Lexington on Saturday, September 7th at 3:30 p.m. on ABC. I will be there providing all live updates and coverage. So be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com for all of that good stuff. Until then, have a great weekend, and I will see you guys next week.